Hello and welcome back to theCUBE's exclusive series, The Road to Intelligent Data Apps. My name's Savannah Peterson, delighted to be joined by analyst George Gilbert today for this fascinating conversation about one of the most hyped topics in technology right now. George, thank you so much for taking the time and for curating this fantastic conversation with our great guests. Are you as excited as I am?
Of course, Savannah. I'm always excited, not just to be with you, but now that we have our Salesforce friends online too.
Yes, yes. And I think one of the cool things is, despite everyone talking about agentic AI, we're going to have the opportunity to talk to our guests today about the role of data and applications in the success of agentic platforms. So without further ado, MK and Alice, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you, George, for inviting us to the show.
You are CUBE OG alums. This is not your first time.
That's right.
It's always
Be back.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No wonder you're so relaxed and calm on camera with us. We really appreciate it. When we were doing prep for this call, I really loved the example that you gave us, Alice. And when we're talking about technology and particularly talking about future forward looking technology, I think it's outstanding to illustrate the benefits of solutions like the one that Salesforce provides through real world examples. You were talking to us on Friday about hotel loyalty programs. Would you mind sharing that with the audience?
Oh, I'm trying to remember which example that was. Yes, I think.
You were talking about gold members and all the different junctures at which you could surprise and delight that customer as a result of the platform with Agentic.
Yeah, I think what I was talking about is the combination. When you're doing AI, when you're building an agent, there's a challenge. Some of the things that you're doing are deterministic, right? I want to make sure that, Savannah, if you're a gold member, I want to know that you are a gold member, right? And if MK is not a gold member, then he's not a gold member. And so in order to be able to take action as an agent, I need access to the database, the structured database that has all of that information. And I need to be able to get that in a deterministic way. And there are other things that are part of checking into a hotel that you can do deterministically, but honestly, it's a pain in the neck, right? So, when it comes to all of the things that we want to do when we check in our gold member, I want to upgrade them to a room if possible, but not in this case. And then maybe in this, and, ideally, I want to make sure I greet them the right way. And, you have this list, which is typically at a hotel stored in more of a unstructured data format, where I have a bunch of policies that are really close to the business that I want to be able to upgrade easily. I want to be able to change them as the business changes. I want to be able to change them because we're hosting a wedding this weekend, right? And it's a huge event, and so that changes maybe what we're going to be doing. And so what we want to do is give the business the flexibility to be able to update those policy guidelines and then have an agent that can reason through those in real time and take advantage of that while combining it with that structured and deterministic things like, hey, are you a gold member? And what we found is when you bring those two together, the power of AI and agentic reasoning to bring that structured and unstructured data together and respond to the business in real time it opens new possibilities, right? Because it means now that I can be closer to the business, I can react to things more quickly, and I can change those policies more easily without hard coding every single option. And so I think that's one of the things that people are looking for when they think about, how do I want to use agents at my company? Because every company has a combination of things that are deterministic, things that are non-deterministic, things that are structured data, things that, they store in PDFs and documents and websites and all of these other places.
I love that. You mentioned something when we were in our preparations as well, that it's not just about data, it's about action. And that's what you were just illustrating right there. I think that's awesome. Actually, since we're talking about examples, and that was a great one, MK, do you have any great examples or use cases for us as we set the stage for this convo?
Yeah, actually, I would start one at home. If you go to help.salesforce or salesforce.com today, the first thing you're going to see is not a website, but actually an agent in action, right? That is an intelligent website for you. So we're not only just changing sort of your internal systems, but our external systems too. And if you go ask that agent questions, it's answering sort of things. It can action. You can go create a case or escalate to a human salesperson or a case service engineer and so on. And the magic behind it is I was reading this thing, intelligent data apps. You kind of captured a lot in there, right? The intelligence comes from our Agentforce and AI layers. The data obviously plays a critical role for it, both all the unstructured data, the website data, the documents, and other things. And of course, part of that is also the actions that we want to enable. But the apps also plays an interesting thing because to build an app, instead of just a custom solution, to build an app, you also need a platform, right? So in that sort of 3 words, you've kind of captured what we do here, which is a platform that brings together the power of data, actions, APIs, along with our agentic layer. So you can actually start giving huge business value to all our customers. And we're seeing that already in action. You've heard Mark talked about it very much, where our agents is now answering more than 83% of our questions. And we have almost half the number of escalations that are coming up from customers from having to need actually a human agent. We've halved the amount of escalations that are going on. So we are already seeing that sort of results play out.
So MK, let's start to unpack that, because this is part of why we're intrigued by what you're building, which is that you have all these pieces to put agentic applications together. So there's the data foundation, which gives the agents context in terms of, let's say, if you think of an agent as a self-driving car, this is like the 4D map of
right.
the environment. But then you also need to be able to, move the steering wheel and, accelerate or brake. Those are all the actions, not just into the Salesforce apps, but through Mulesoft and integration back into legacy applications. And then as you were saying, the agents can combine these deterministic actions with sort of more tacit knowledge and decisions that they are sort of programmed with by the unstructured knowledge. But let's start to unpack that one by one. So let's talk about the data cloud. Now, MK, you and I have talked about this in previous shows, and we'll put links into those in the show notes. But let's do a quick recap about how data cloud it's almost kind of like a data fabric. We've been talking about the 6 data platform on theCUBE since we interviewed Ryan Blue, who's the creator of Iceberg, like 18 months ago. But here you're allowed to, you have this platform that has all the data storage, open format in one layer. And then you add all this value, not just the compute engines, but all the value to make sense of the data by putting metadata around that. Elaborate on what that means and how it's not directly comparable to the traditional data platforms we've seen in the industry. It's more a layer above that.
That's correct. So the way you should look at it, if you look at pretty much every enterprise, Alice and I have probably talked to hundreds and hundreds of sort of CIOs, CEOs across the world, across industries. They all have one constant problem, which is they really need right data to make their business work. And with now agents answering your customer's question, that data becomes even more critical to get the right data, right? Because you don't want the agent answering something wrong. And the part of the challenge is the data is siloed, right? There are many, many data platforms, and particularly if you have acquisitions or others, it really gets crazier. And so what Data Cloud allows you to do is to be able to bring all that data together. And it does in a very interesting way. So it's not like just go build some DIY thing. What it does it in a structured way of really putting metadata on top of it. So that means whether it's a table in Snowflake, it's some file sitting in an S3 bucket, it's a BigQuery system, or maybe it's some backend SQL database, et cetera. You can bring all that data, and we allow sort of 4 levels how you can bring that data. You can ingest that data, and we make it super easy. You don't need special ETL tools. It's all just built in. We can bring it in sub-second real time. We can build in streaming. We can build in batch, or you can even leave the data where it is with our warehouse and other partners, and we can literally just bring the metadata. Now, when you do that, we are putting a Salesforce metadata lens on it. So that means you don't have to care as an application builder or an agentic builder on top. You don't care now where that data is coming from, because now you have one common way of talking to it, which is our Salesforce object model. And then on top of that, we provide few value-added features. One is a full security and governance layer so that you can actually start like making sure who has access to what data. But we also allow you to do harmonization and unification on it. So if it's a customer data, if it's an account data, as an example, 99% of the time, you're going to have many different versions of the same customer. I'm sure if you go look up George in maybe in your own system, there may be multiple versions of George, just because you may have different email addresses, maybe names are misspelled and so on. So we allow you to do a unification harmonization so that you can actually stitch all that together. So I know if it's Savannah, okay, it's Savannah, did she get an email? Did she open the email? Did she have a sales call? Did she browse our website? Did she have a commerce transaction? Whatever it may be, you can bring that 360 view, right? That is very powerful, because now either when I'm a human agent answering a question or I'm a real digital agent, it now has that 360 view. Now, on top of that, we've also added value-added features such as creating insights. And more recently, we have built this thing called a semantic model so that you can bring all the analytical richness into that same data layer. So now you can have a single view of your data with all the insights across the entire application surface, Tableau, as well as your agents, right? That is kind of the difference with Data Cloud. So it's not just about a data platform. It's truly bringing in the business layering as well as the data together and surface it in all of these applications and analytics, and of course, non-Salesforce assets as well.
So just to clarify, make sure everyone understands, when you talk about the semantic model, like for a long time, including on our show, we talked about the semantic layer as being like metrics and dimensions that BI tools use, but this is something richer. This is, if I'm understanding right, this is like the data graph where you can build essentially a graph of not just the customer's sort of profile objects, but the entire engagement journey. And then under the covers, it's like a JSON object, but under the covers, like Hyperforce, your platform data engine maintains the links of this graph, and it's pulling it together from all those objects in the data lake and in the customer 360 apps. Is that the right way to think about it?
So maybe we should separate it into two parts, right? So there is a data graph that we allow. Why is a data graph needed? So we talked about all this data, right? About the customer data, we brought in engagement data and so on and so forth. But many times, let's say you're on a website or you're talking to an agent or you're browsing something, you want that sub-second personalization or sub-second response, because I might have browsed something and I'm asking a question right there. You want that response. Now, this might need you to look up 15 different tables or 20 different tables, right, to answer that question. So what we have done in optimization, think of it like the old-time materialized view in databases, but this is a more JSON represented data graph. So I can say, you know what, cache things like user, their last 10 engagement, their last 5 purchases, their last 5 clicks, whatever they may be. And we can materialize that, keep that in memory and keep it updated in sub-seconds so that when that request is coming in, you can look it up in one shot, you know everything about that user account, et cetera, and be able to go answer it. So that's what a data graph is. Now, on top of all of this data, you also want to standardize KPIs and metrics across the organization. Let's assume there's a sales KPI. Now, the challenge with that often is these kind of KPI creations have been stuck within the business tool lens. So for example, if it's case of Tableau, we have SQL, or other systems like Power BI, they have their own ways of doing it. The problem is if you're doing it within a dashboard, that KPI is within that dashboard. So one person might create one dashboard, another person creates a different KPI of the different dashboards. You often have this conflict. You have seen that, right? We go to meetings, you're like, oh, my number doesn't agree with your number. And that's because people go define their own sort of KPIs. And so for that, what we have now done is bring that semantic modeling, that analytical KPI modeling also down at the data level. So which means if I now define a sales KPI measure, or if I define an engineering KPI measure, that same measure will now work for your Tableau dashboards, your sales dashboards that you might have, your lightning panes. Your agents can answer the same question as to, okay, why is my sales going up or down? and it will all be rendezvoused on the same thing. That is the power. So with data graphs, you can now give that sub-second responses. With our semantic models, you can now create a consistent KPIs across your enterprise.
Okay, so just to transition, and then Savannah, maybe you take us to the next, just to distill. So the data graph captures the JSON goodness that app developers like, but you maintain the connections of a harder to traverse traditionally graph.
That's correct.
And,
that is correct.
Okay, and that maps it to the sort of web of data underneath. All right, so Savannah, now why don't you help us introduce the next topic, which was all about integration.
Well, one of the things that I'd love to ask Alex, and thank you, George, and great explanation there, and an awesome way to get the lay of the land, MK, is, I think there are a lot of myths when it comes to adopting an agentic platform and thinking about even the data structure and foundations here. I'm curious, Alice, what are some of the myths that you're encountering as you talk to your community and roll these programs out at scale?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all played with the AI initially, and there's some things that it blows you away with how amazing it is, right? It could write a whole song, it can do all of these things, and then you play with it, and there's some things that honestly it doesn't do as well, right? It's not very funny. Humor is not, AI is not great at humor, right? But I think also as people started to look at it as they put it into their into an enterprise setting, into an enterprise context with security, it doesn't do a great job without the data, without the context, and without being able to take action within the enterprise. And I think that one of the things that, as I talk to companies, one of the challenges is they've got an AI and it works really well by itself on an island. Like, it does cool things. In the LLM, you can call it does cool things. And there's more of a challenge than they expected to be able to figure out, how do I make sure that when I call this AI, I'm doing it with the right data to take the right action. So I'll give you an example, Heathrow Airport, right? They have a ton of customers with all sorts of, questions and queries about, where's my bag, and, where is the closest bathroom, and all of the things that you would want to know at Heathrow Airport. And, that data is in Heathrow's, they have all that data. Some of it is static, and they always know it. They know where the restaurants are. They know the locations. The map doesn't change that often. And then there's some that's coming in live, right? Where my bag is real-time data that's streaming in as these flights land, as these bags go to different places. And in order to make the AI useful to do something that's going to really drive return on investment for Heathrow, right? To be able to say, hey, it's not just answering some fun question with some fun answer, but it's actually moving my customers forward. It needs access to the data. And I think what I'm hearing is, we really do need to tie that data in. All the things that MK just talked about, that's what Heathrow had to do in order to be able to use Agentforce to be able to answer real questions for their customers. And they're using it. They've got a 95% accuracy rate. And the reason they're able to do that is because they've got the real data and they're streaming it in. The real-time data, the data that's coming from the static data that's all about Heathrow, and bringing that together as part of the agent, as part of the agent answer.
I love that, Alice. So you're telling me that agentic AI is going to make the travel experience joyful again, or at least make it a little bit better?
Definitely better. Definitely better. The agents aren't like flying the planes yet, as far as I know.
Well, I mean, there's the argument that there's been a lot of that autopilot essentially already put into a lot of these aircrafts. We could go down a real travel rabbit hole very quickly if we weren't careful, but I do love the Heathrow example. The team and I will actually be in Heathrow in just a couple weeks. So that's very spot on for us. As you were describing that example, when I think of airports and I think of a bird's eye view of all the little tiny things that are moving and going on that have to work in sync all at the same time, I think that despite the frequency with which I know the team and I travel, I actually have a lot of empathy for the situations there, understanding the multiple business processes and specific outcomes that need to happen throughout the course of my personal travel, let alone a day's airport's operations. when we're talking about, and MK, you mentioned this a little bit, so I'm gonna turn this to you. When we're talking about the connectors or the bridges or the integration and the automation here, this is an incredibly complex challenge. Can you tell us how you approach that and how you help your community and customers approach that as well, and in situations, I mean, as complex as international travel, for example?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Like the kind of what Alice mentioned. If you just take Heathrow, even a sliver of Heathrow, it's about so many different sources, so many different actions that have to happen, and also a lot of different people to touch. Right? It's not just about, hey, some data, some here, because these are different business units, business lines, right? Each of them have their own sort of challenges, and also each of them have their own way to kind of like their business objectives and goals that they have to meet, right? And so, really, I think the way we tell people is focus on some end-to-end scenario, bring that to life, and sort of use the power of the platform that we have so that it's not a one-off thing, so that every new scenario that you're bringing up is just adding more to it and making it better, right? And so that starts off by understanding the data that you want to bring in for that scenario, by hooking it up, creating the right canonical models, figuring out the actions you need, whether it's like flow, whether it's APIs, and then really making sure if you're going into the agentic land that you create the right topics and give the right scope. Because one of the key things for your agents to succeed is not just having the data and the actions, but making sure you teach the agent what to do. This we do with every human people too, right? When you bring in anybody on board, you have a whole onboarding and what you can do, what you can do, right? Who should you ask, and so on. And so we have created our agent platform to actually have all of that stuff. So we call that topics, we call that instructions, we call that guardrails. And so that is part of the learning that we all have to do as a business, right? Now we are teaching a computer as to what you can do or cannot do. And then we as a platform, we've also given all the tools so that we can handle the exceptions. The exception could be, hey, you need to go escalate to a human. And so we can actually give all the context to the humans to see what they're happening. Or it could just be alerts, like if there are toxicity that's happening, maybe somebody's trying to ask your agent like the wrong questions, bad questions, and so on. All of those things we've also built out of the box, and of course, all the dashboards that come with it as well. So that is what we tell people: get your data right, get your APIs actions right, but also focus on making sure you tell your agent what it can or cannot do, and then keep monitoring it and growing with it.
So before we talked about sort of the data, and now you've introduced the notion of sort of curating the right actions. Let's talk about Mulesoft and how that's a critical part of this, because from what I understand, that Mulesoft is taking us a step beyond not just the data pipelines from external sources, but curating the actions themselves, and that there's this new approach. It's almost like where with SQL, we had this revolution where instead of navigating the data, we could say what we wanted, not how. And it sounds like with Mulesoft, we're starting to build connectors by saying what we want in terms of data and potentially what actions we want to invoke. And then that's elevated up into something then that the agent would understand. Help us understand how we're going to a new abstraction level with these Mulesoft development environments and connection and automation capabilities.
Great one. So as you know, Mulesoft, along with Flow, right, between automation and integration, it provides a bunch of things. One is a whole connectivity envelope, right? So you can actually connect to a lot of hundreds and hundreds of sources. It allows you to do what is called as API management, so that you can actually have sort of put an API on all of your existing thing, govern, manage it, along with creating APIs for systems that may not even have APIs. That's what we call as the RPA. And of course, like understanding unstructured like documents, like forms and other kind of things, converting them to structure. Right? Those are all various things that it does. What we have now done is really agentify this automation and integration experience. When we say agentify, it's a few things. One is certainly now you can use agents to go create a lot of these connectors and flows and other things. So you can actually explain what you want to do, go create it. That's one. But even more interesting is the new topic center we just launched in GA, where now you can take any API in your enterprise. You can now actually add some metadata to it, or we can auto-generate the metadata to kind of say what this API is about. And now this becomes a topic with your agents. So which means you can get your mainframe to talk English. You can actually talk to your SAP, whatever it may be that Mulesoft can connect, or your old Visual Basic code, you can actually start conversing with it. And that brings us to the next step, which is, okay, now if you can start conversing with it as a human, we can have other agents also converse with it. And so we kind of slowly then leading that revolution on to agents now talking to agents, which we call as our multi-agentic behavior as well. So that's kind of an evolution into that next plane. So we are all in. We are really sort of going to be changing how agents behave with the rest of your enterprise using this platform. Alice, I don't know if you want to add anything more.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think there's another element too, which is the governance piece of what you've got there, right? So if you think about it, I don't know, let's say I'm cooking dinner, right? What are the ingredients I've got in my kitchen that I can use to cook dinner, right? And any one, I don't know, my analogy is breaking down. This analogy isn't working, but any one system, right? Whether it's NetSuite or Salesforce or anything out there, right, is going to have a subset of the tools that I actually want to be able to solve an end-to-end problem for my customer. Like, let's say, I'm doing customer support, and then I want to go from there to order management, and I want to go from there to being able to update my inventory. I'm going to my supply chain. All of those pieces are coming from different systems. And what we're able to, for a long time, those pieces that MK was talking about that companies had is basically organizing all of those ingredients in your kitchen. So I know exactly which pieces I've got them labeled, I've got them managed, I've got them governed. I can control who can use the paprika spice and who can use this spice, and maybe not too much because it's a little too spicy, and how often I can use it, and I can manage it, I can govern it, I can monitor it, I can see it. That's the baseline. That's been important. It's been important for years, and that's, I think the core and the heart of where Mulesoft came from. And now, when we have agents being able to take action, you really want those ingredients labeled. You really want them organized. You really want them governed, because running an IT department or running a business, you want to be able to know exactly what your agents can use across the system. You want it easily accessible. You want to be able to create it. You want to be able to manage it. You want to be able to govern it. And I think that MuleSoft is becoming more relevant than ever in this world of agentic, in this world of AI. And it is what gives the agents the power to be able to really take action across your enterprise.
So let me just follow up on this, because this is really interesting. For the longest time, we've had connectors, and the burden was on the developer. And I don't mean necessarily MuleSoft connectors, but anyone's connectors. That, yeah, let's say they could, it was not just for ingesting data, but let's say they could activate, and there was some way to operationalize a decision, to use them as an actuator. Now, yeah, you have agents representing the capabilities. So it's sort of like the agents are harmonizing the APIs the way you had the data model objects harmonizing data in the data cloud. Now, in the past, we've had deterministic workflow orchestration. How does deterministic workflows, or how do deterministic workflows complement agentic workflows across connectors? Like, is it, I can't imagine it's all one or the other. Like, how might you mix them in what's called, I think people are calling a cognitive architecture, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely a combination. And what we want to do is give people the tools to be able to mix these things together. So let's start with the deterministic piece. That's where we have, we have low code, we have pro code, things like Flow that give you deterministic automation, workflow management. And those workflows, again, they might be connected across your enterprise, right? So something like processing an order return. I want to make sure I do that exactly the right way. I've got compliance rules. I've got inventory that I want to update. So I'm going to run a deterministic workflow that's going to go to the different systems and update them in exactly the right way, the same way every time. And then there are things where being able to reason with AI in order to compose together these different deterministic processes at runtime gives me whole new capabilities as an organization. It gives me more flexibility. It gives me the capability to reason at runtime and compose individual capabilities together in a way that I didn't have to plan and document at design time when I was designing it. So if you think about the recipe example that I was using before, right? If I wanted to add a new recipe to my list of recipes, I could have done it before. And I would go through and I would say, you're going to put in 2 teaspoons of this and 3/4 tablespoons of that. And, call this, call this, call this, call this. And it could do it and it could iterate on it every time. But what happens when I'm out of pepper? What should I do? How do I adapt to the world that changes? And these systems change. So what we want to do is we want to enable ourselves to be able to say, hey, I just came home from work and I'm going to figure out what I'm going to make based on based on the ingredients that happen to be in my fridge today. And I'm going to make something new, something that we didn't exactly plan for at runtime, but something that solves the problem that's in front of me. And that's what AI allows us to do. AI allows us to take these different deterministic capabilities, these APIs, these functionality, and compose them dynamically at runtime to solve the problem that's in front of us, which I think is amazing. It's gonna unlock whole new capabilities for companies.
I totally agree, and I really am loving the food analogies over here. I just want to let you know, Alice, I'm literally going to be thinking about governance as my spice rack from now moving forward. Continuing that analogy, or at least attempting to continue that, this also gives us a richness in analytics, correct? In the same way that we could take a look at all the cupcakes we've baked with these wonderful recipes or the various things, you're able to provide a really holistic and complete analysis of that, correct?
Yeah, well, I think what MK was talking about earlier, okay, you want to keep talking, but the capability also within analytics to understand what the KPIs are for my organization means that the AI can be intelligent in a different way. It doesn't just have the base level, this is where that suitcase is at Heathrow, and this is, who you are at Heathrow. You can level it up another level so that one of my base ingredients can be KPIs I am trying to hit. Like, I'm trying to minimize the amount of time it takes people to get their luggage. And I can understand what that concept is, that higher level concept, which makes the AI more intelligent as well. And it also feeds back into the analytics. I don't know if MK, you want to talk about how
Yeah, I want to add a
analytics.
little bit more to what Alice said, right? Like, I think we talked about that semantic model, which is allowing us to go create that common standard KPIs. But it's also important, like Alice said, sometimes these aggregates in dashboards just tell you, oh, something bad happened. You really want to know what's going on. Now, because we also have all that data, underlying data, the agent can actually go to the next level. To Alice's point, if I say, okay, my bag is delayed, why? Okay, maybe because the other plane was late or whatever it is, right? So all that fine-grained detailed data is also there. So agents or Tableau dashboards, you can start drilling down and analyzing. And that also brings you to another interesting thing, which is because you have all of this stuff, you can now actually start segmenting this populace, right? And start analyzing clusters. And maybe you need to go send an apology email or maybe give them a discount coupon next time or things like that. So you can actually start doing much, much more things with that data. So it's one part about analyzing, creating common KPIs, so you know what it is. Another, to be able to drill down. Third is to be able to go create the clusters and start doing something with it, actioning with it. That's also now possible because everything is on the common platform.
So let me drill down on that, MK, because both of you guys set something up that sounds really interesting. You've got the data graph, which sounded like it synthesized kind of the profile for the context of that individual customer, and not
right.
not just like the things related to the customer, but the process that they've been on, and that's really important. And then the Tableau semantics sounds like the semantic model is, it takes it out of what used to be just in dashboards and it puts a model of KPIs of how the organization runs. And that's almost like another data graph. It's a metric tree. And then the agents can look at, let's say, it might be in the hospitality example, might be a VIP, there's something that disrupts the customer's experience, and an agent, there's not a rule for how to respond to that customer, but you want to respond based on how important that customer is, but it also wants to respect the KPIs, like the KPIs to reduce customer churn. That's like one metric, and there's a higher level metric, like a North Star metric for the organization, like their free cash flow objectives, like way at the top. Like, help us bring that together where, the Tableau semantics are one set of context about the financial goals and the KPI goals, and the data graph is context for that one customer.
Right.
And an agent might want to make decisions based on both.
Great point. So I think these are all interchangeable, right? Meaning when you create a KPI, if it's on a person, as an example, the lifetime value, as an example, that KPI can also be attached to the data graph, because in the end, it's about that person. So I know George is like a high lifetime value, right, member, as an example. And so from an agent perspective, it can quickly grab not just what you've done, your sort of back history, but also all the KPIs that are relevant to you. And then in your agentic sort of programming, if you may, which is just instructions, you could say, make sure our high lifetime value customers are feeling loud, right? Our high customer, we don't attrit. And this is where the predictive AI also comes in, because you can actually have predictive algorithms running on all this data that keeps saying, okay, this person, maybe they saw 10 such disruptions, and the chance of them attriting are very high. So there can be another rule that says, okay, if a sort of high value customers attrition rate is more than, 60%, offer them more. It's okay, maybe even if it's financially disruptive in the short term, it may be valuable in the long term. So you have the capability based on your business goals to kind of then guide the agent in the right way to say, okay, here's all the KPIs, semantic models, here's the predictive algorithms that are saying X, Y, Z. It's all available in your data graph for the user. Go make the right decisions based on that.
So let me now take that to the next step, and either of you jump in. What I'm trying to understand is, like, this collection of artifacts, the analytic artifacts, or the data artifacts, the predictive models, the agents, that's getting smarter over time. There's going to be, the predictive models get retrained, the agents get fine-tuned, and I want to call out also something. We've been hearing much about the data wall, and we've been hearing a lot about the problem of doing evals with agents. Now, that seems to be less of an issue when you've got KPIs, because your evals are, does the agent improve, does it improve the KPI? And if you're using reinforcement learning, you don't need like tons of new data. Am I understanding this right? That sort of in this setting where you've got the data graph and the KPIs, the agents can improve. The KPIs are the evals, and the KPIs also make up for not having tons and tons of new data. You've got, like, the agents are getting better sort of just by working within the context that you're setting up.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think this is probably where sort of Salesforce, because we are focused on the enterprise audience, right? Our loop, if you may, is a tight loop. So we have sort of the inner loop, which is, okay, agent is answering something, and as a customer, I like it or I don't like it. I give it thumbs up, thumbs down, or I say, you know what, call a supervisor, call a human agent, I would need help, right? So those are all clear signals to say, did that inner loop work? But then there's the outer loop, right? Which is after you've gone through the conversation, whether the customer actually converted, if it's a sales kind of term, or if it's a marketing, did they actually open the email? Did they actually come to your website and so on? Or if it's a service scenario, did the case get resolved and they give you a good CSAT score and so on? We also have that outer loop. And so this is where both the inner loop, sort of very simple, okay, am I thumbs up, down? And the outer loop KPIs that call, okay, did the sales complete and everything is available right there. And so your agents are going to get smarter, not only in that quick loop of, okay, did I answer correctly? But also the longer loop, which might take hours, days, sometimes, right, for a thing to close, but it has both that advantage. And so that's kind of how we are training our agents to know the agents get smarter based on that two loops.
So let me ask one more question, again, for both of you. This getting smarter on the inner loops and the outer loops, and I mean, there can be multiple sort of concentric loops here. We need to start moving beyond thinking of these sort of individual artifacts, like individual agents or individual analytic models. We're building a system. And,
Right.
and that system is getting smarter. And I want to make one other distinction, because we've talked about some things that are non-deterministic, that belong in the land of agents, some things that are deterministic, that you want them repeatable, precise. Can like a human supervisor, whether it's an admin, a developer, maybe even a business analyst, can you take something that the agent learned and performed, and then materialize that and make it deterministic? So you're saying, I want this to be a repeatable rule.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that we are going to see more and more of that, where people look at new places. New places is a great place for AI to work, right? AI can work on the problems that I haven't yet deterministically coded out every single answer. That's a great place for AI to get started, right? I can give it either low value problems, common problems, things that are weird and different things coming in. And because I can look at what my actual ROI is, what is my actual goal, right? If I can define that, and if I can say, in this case, what I'm looking for is increasing the amount of money we're making in this space, right? I'm trying to improve efficiency here, right? So I define what that KPI is that I'm looking for. I then can let AI experiment, right? I can let it try things. I can build things more quickly because I have AI helping me build the solutions, and because AI can solve a lot of these problems at runtime. And then I can see, where is it working? Where do I want to take something that's happening today with AI and say, no, I'm going to, we tried, it's the modern version of experimentation. We used to A/B test things on a website, and we would put out 2 different versions, and we'd look at them and we would say, okay, this one's getting higher return on investment with what I'm trying to do. Now with AI, I can try out a whole lot more things. I can then say, these are the things that are working. This is where I want to be doubling down. And whether it is increasing the number of agents working in that area because I'm getting the return on investment, increasing the amount of time that my agents are spending solving these problems, or maybe some of these problems I become more of my deterministic workflow, my deterministic process, because we found the right way to do it. And we just want to do it that way every single time. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think we're beginning to see companies experiment, they're playing with it, they're throwing it out there. And I'm excited to see what happens in this space. I also think, related to that, there's another interesting question, which is, these agents are actually a network of agents. And we have, at Salesforce, we have App Exchange, which has 7,500 ISVs who are building out these capabilities, these agentic capabilities. So it's not something that I do by myself. It's something that I, as a customer, get to do in partnership with all of these other companies who are also bringing this value and creating agents, creating skills, creating actions that can work together as part of this agentic framework.
Yeah, let me maybe add a few more to what Alice said. Amazing thing is a few examples. One is we're seeing that in even our demo scenarios where you could say, ask, for example, if it's a financial agent, to say, the customer wants a credit card limit increase. What should you recommend? That sounds like a simple question, but that really involves looking up your bank's rules that says, people with this credit profile, you can only give this much credit limit increase. Or if they have so many cards, you can only do the X, Y, Z, and so on. Coupling that with things like their actual credit score and their actual transactions, right? So it's a kind of a combination of structured and unstructured. And the agent can actually look at all this and give you a recommendation saying, do this, right? And similarly, in the service case, what Alice sort of mentioned is we can actually go create those things for our service agents to go execute on. Like the AI can actually say, here's the steps you need to go execute if for this particular issue. And the service agent can simply just say, yep, I accept it, and go create that. Those are dynamic sort of flows, if you may, that we've created, right? And more interestingly, just like she mentioned about App Exchange, another big one is Slack. So Slack is pretty much used as for one of the most loud enterprise app, as you can imagine. And now Slack allows all of these agents to be created. And now you can also mix and match agents along with humans, because you can converse with an agent, you can give answers, agent learns from it, and you can pull in all these network of agents very, very easily into swarming and solving issues as well. So these are all things that are happening as she's sort of explaining in sort of real life in these sort of surfaces.
It's awesome. It's the not only the evolution of experimentation, like you said, Alice. It's also the evolution of DevOps to AI ops, and who knows actually what kind of ops we'll have as we move forward. This has been a really thrilling conversation, and we could talk all afternoon as we discussed. I have a question for y'all, since you're really on the front lines, not just of the conversation, but of the implementation at scale of agentic platforms. What do you hope to be able to say when George and I have you on the show, say a year from now or even 6 months from now, that you can't say yet today? Alice, your smile is so big. I'm going to you first.
Oh no, I was thinking about it. Give me a minute.
No, take your time. Take your time. All right, MK, do you feel like you can go to bat at the top?
Yeah, a year from now, I think you will look back and say, it wasn't about who came first, it was about who got it right. I feel with our comprehensive platform, you might have seen that hemisphere slide, and we're seeing a lot of our competitors just copy it, including the colors. But basically, that slide is real. And for any enterprise agentic to succeed, you need that. You need all those ingredients. And so we believe we are at the forefront of getting all of that together into an integrated sort of platform. So platform is the main thing, right? So it's not a one-off effort. We want to make sure it's repeatable. We want to make sure as you build new things, it adds on to it and not just another silo solution. And so we think in a year from now, you're going to see a few things. We're going to see dramatic improvements in how these agents are behaving, in how they work together with humans, and they learn. And I think, like as George asked, really to be able to network across and solve problems. So it's not just about answering questions, it's about solving problems. And you will see us get there with our platform.
Well stated. All right, Alice.
A +1 to everything MK said. I think, if I were to add on, I think that the first version of things for a lot of companies is getting your first agent up and running, and getting a and maybe it's an internal agent, maybe it's doing customer service, maybe it's helping with sales coaching, and you have sort of this first thing, and you begin to see the results, and you begin to see the value. And then instantly what I hear is, let's make an agent for this, let's make an agent for that. Internally at Salesforce, I don't know, MK, how many agents do we have right now? I don't even know. Every time I turn around, there's more of them.
Yeah,
But, I'll just give you an example. For demo environments, we had a team that was making the demo environments, and they're like, let's just spin up an agent for creating demo environments. So now in Slack, I can just be like, I need a demo environment, I need to show off these features, I need this data, and boom, the agent is using is
all the
reading the
APIs.
message, interpreting it and creating that demo environment for me. We have that across the board. We have, the HR team is using agents to help me do, annual reviews. So I think what we're going to switch from is, okay, I built an agent here, I built an agent there, to now companies need to really think about, what is that network of agents that are running in my organization? How do I govern that? How do I observe that? How do I monitor that? How do I manage that network of agents and the communications between these different agents? And how do I do that with access to the right data safely and securely? And that's where I think, what we're going to see is companies more and more looking at, having 150 separate agents all over the place doing things is powerful, but not exactly what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is a consistent platform where I can control what is that data that's coming in, what is the governance of that data, how do I make sure the right data is accessible to the right agents so they're making the right decisions and they have access to the right things, that I have a governance layer, I have a trust layer, and that those agents are working within a framework where they can take real action across my enterprise in an organized way. And so that's, I think, where you're going to see Salesforce providing these capabilities, and I think we're going to see more and more need for that within our customers as well.
Let me see if I can synthesize this and just get a quick reaction from you guys. A biz dev exec from an agent vendor told me that there are about 100 customer-facing agent startups valued at $500 million or more. And what you described, Alice, was, this notion that people might have dozens or even hundreds of agents, but that would be just reinforcing the silos we've built over the last however many decades. What we really need for this to work is a platform that harmonizes the data about the state of the enterprise and harmonizes the actions that the agents can take. And my understanding is what makes Salesforce potentially unique is that because you have sort of a dominant position in customer-related data and then activating that customer-related data or operationalizing it with your own apps and then through Mulesoft, now other apps, you can actually become a platform not just for building the customer-facing apps, that's where people would start, but potentially for something broader. That's why, I'm calling this as a potential new hyperscale platform. You draw them in with the customer data and the customer operationalization actions, and then it becomes just the most convenient, easy to use, and most expressive, potentially powerful platform for building agentic apps. Is that one way to distill what Salesforce is going after?
I think it's a great sort of segue because our platform is not just about sales or service, right? It's a broad enterprise platform because your salesperson, your marketer, your service person is also an employee. And so you can sort of take our platform, expand that to the rest of the enterprise to be able to also look at how they're performing, what are they doing, right? And give them all the tools necessary, Agentic. Alice's example, right? Like of being able to go spin a demo environment. That's not a sales or service scenario, right? That's really like an enterprise scenario. And so our platform is fully open, fully extensible, and really ready for the sort of the entire enterprise, sort of beyond just sales and service. So yeah, you captured that right.
Okay.
And it's the same value, the core value here is that manageability, right? That ability to make sure you've got all the right data, that it's organized, that you have the governance, that you have the security in place, and so that you can control, govern, observe what's happening as you roll out these agentic capabilities.
Okay, so we will come back. We have so much more we can cover. Let's leave it as a soon to be done part 2. Savannah, why don't you bring us home?
Absolutely. This was such a fantastic conversation covering everything from hotel loyalty to the complex business processes at London Heathrow Airport to governance as a spice rack. Really couldn't have asked for more from both of you, MK and Alice. Thank you so much for taking the time to discuss all of this with you. And George, always a pleasure to join you. Also, most importantly, thank all of you wherever you might be tuning in. We're here in our Palo Alto studios. You're watching theCUBE, the leading source for enterprise tech news.